Right now, it's 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, expect a high of 56 degrees.
Now don't be like me and wait too long into the cold season to try to put those hoses away. It's a major pain in the butt when those things get cold, so I'm gonna try out those new kind of foldable hoses, whatever you want to call them, in the near future here. I got some on a clearance at Walmart the other day, which, by the way, right now there's a lot of those stores doing tons of clearances on lawn stuff, so it's kind of been of a kid in a candy store type of deal there. You might want to check that out too. Don't mind this thing in my face right here. We're not going to talk about that right at this moment, so you're gonna have to bear with me for a little bit, but I know it looks bad. So 2.5 inches of rain that caused our creek to flood the other night. Not really an uncommon thing. It happens probably at least 2 or 3 times during the season. Washed away a lot of all the junk down here on the creek bank, which is not a bad thing, but it always leaves the ground really soggy down here for a few days. It's hard to get a mower down here for a while just because it's really saturated. I told you we were gonna go straight from like 90 degrees to this, and there was not much of an in-between there, but I love sweatshirt weather. It's my favorite weather. It's my favorite season right now, fall. As things cool down here, it's just a nice break from that summer heat that we get. I'm much more of a cool season guy anyway. As far as temperatures go, I like the 60s and 50s as well. You know, I'm always surprised in the videos when someone sees just a split second of something and they notice and they're studying the videos and they say, what's going on over in this section right here of your yard? So pretty impressive stuff there. I will tell you guys that you notice all these little details of everything going on. So this right here is something that I have not really talked about because I don't know, I really don't have a reason. When I got done with all that leveling the front yard, I had some soil left. Instead of carting it all the way down to the creek bank where I have typically stored any of my extra stuff, as you can see, it washes away sometimes too. This was a bumpy area that I knew I could put some new soil in. When we built our shed, there was a lot of traffic over here. It got trampled on a lot. With all that, I just decided to add some fill in here, and that's what I did, and I planted some seed. But I only planted the seed maybe 10 days ago, so I wanted to start it slightly later than everything else into the season, see how it handled the winter with the late start. I used the 50-50 mix that is on that exact yard right behind there. So it's 50% rye, 50% Kentucky bluegrass, 3 different kinds of each of those. And the rye, of course, came up within probably 4 or 5 days, and the blue is just starting to make its way in here. That's what's going on over here. I haven't talked about it, but it just kind of looks like a mess, honestly. There's definitely some fescue mixed in originally over in this yard too, so look at this. This is a big clump right there of fescue. The other interesting fact about what I did over here is that I did not do any watering with this. So that was the other test that I wanted to do. I wanted to just let it be rainfall and see what would happen, and we did get some rainfalls, but there was probably at least a full day, maybe a day and a half, where it did not get any water, and I just let it be. It was kind of warm during that time frame too. Of course, you want to do the best thing possible with watering your yard after you put seed down. I would never tell you don't do that, but I know some of you run into those situations where you're really busy. So maybe you just have an area like this where you want to put some seed down, and even if you can't get to it watering wise as much as you would like to, you will likely still have some results there as long as you get rainfall every couple days. If it's looking like it's not going to rain at all, then no, you're not going to have any success with that seed. But that's just a little thing to show you here about irrigation and using natural rainfall if you have to. You can definitely see right here where a river of water ran down this way. Not surprising. I don't believe I've talked about this since I actually put in this edging. So a few people have asked long term, how is this thing held up? And for the most part, honestly, it's held up really well. Our dogs like to come in here, walk in here, and then move this mulch around. So that's one problem that we have there. But you will see some grass coming in here. So the weed barrier that we used was just newspaper. I've not found really any weeds in there. But what I have found is the old Kentucky blue has moved itself in here from rhizomes. So let's pull one of these bluegrass plants out of here. I'll show you this bluegrass here, how far this thing is moving. So yeah, that has brought itself all the way from over here, all the way underneath that barrier, and then it's finding a way up into here, and you can see all of those little shoots are going to be plants. It's pretty interesting stuff how that works. So that's really the only thing that has made its way through here. I haven't noticed any weeds, as I said, and I'm pretty happy with it. Also, after I sprayed that Creeping Charlie in the backyard, I sprayed some clover up here with that same T-zone. You'll see this one is looking pretty sick. I didn't use a surfactant, so it's hard to kill clover without using a surfactant usually. This one definitely looks like it's gone, so it does work on clover. I'm going to do some more testing with that in the future to see about using some surfactant and how that's going to work out for me. So here is the sissy grass, and I don't know if you're going to see this on camera or not, but I'll get a close-up for you. There are a bunch of new shoots coming up because I overseeded this again. The reason being is that once I hit it with growth regulator pretty hard, I was noticing that some of the areas that were not that full to begin with after my top dressing were not growing in too much and were slowed down a lot from that regulator. So I probably should have backed off that rate. That was what it was, so I put down some more ryegrass, and it was another instance where I did not water it. And it took a few more days, probably a few more than usual, and then here we are now with new shoots coming up, and even getting late into the season, it's still growing. One other true benefit of that grass type is that it's very easy to overseed. You can throw seed down. I didn't put anything over top the seed. All I did was spread it out into the yard. Goes down to the soil layer, especially if you have a good existing turf there to hold it. Comes back up and it grows. It's awesome. And so far I've been keeping this at a 1/2 inch and it's still looking good. So I'm gonna keep it there for right now. Usually towards the end of the season, whenever that happens to be, it just depends on weather, I will kind of stop at that point mowing, let it grow just to whatever it's gonna grow to. I think last time before winter, maybe it got to around 1 inch or so. I don't know, I can't remember, but that's my plan so far. All right, here is another area that I haven't updated for a while. This is the bluegrass out front, and I can really tell it's starting to change its color now into a much deeper green. There are quite a few more weeds in this section than over in the blanket section, so this whole area was a test between leaving that blanket on and not leaving it on. So over here I took it off probably soon after I found germination happening, and I wanted to do that because I was noticing those air bubbles on the other side with the blanket, so I wanted to test this without. It seems to be slightly thinner at this point than the other area, but it's also, though, a week or a week and a half seeded later than that other section, so that makes a difference too. But overall, it's filling in. Mainly what I have coming up are just broadleaf weeds like this. No big deal. They're really easy to spray out, and I probably would actually do that today if it wasn't so windy, but it's too windy out today. That's actually been a major question lately, is when can you spray the weeds after you've seeded? You're gonna have to check your label on the product that you're using, but for broadleaf weeds like this, I won't be using anything too crazy, just a regular type of weed killer that you could get anywhere. And usually that's around 3 to 4 mows after you've mowed this 3 to 4 times. So this is now a couple months old for me. I can definitely spray it, and I will be doing that before we get to the end of the season, because right now in fall is a great time to do that. The weeds are still actively growing, so before it gets too cold, that's a good idea. So here's the thinnest area that I have, but there's so many plants in here and they're all leafing out and branching out. This has already spread quite a bit in the last week, so I know that next season we have all these existing plants here. I'm not worried about it filling itself in with bluegrass, no problem at all there. But this is essentially the worst section that I have. So I showed you those thin spots over there in one of the last videos. There's really not a whole lot of activity going on in there, too much shade on this side, which I've talked about as well. To my very unscientific testing right here, the Midnight and the Mazama, I'm going to pronounce it that way from now on because apparently it comes from a mountain in Oregon, which makes sense. Grass seed mainly comes from Oregon. The middle one there does not look quite as dark to me yet. So this is very early testing time. We won't know until probably next spring on a final look at the color and how that's doing and all that. So from all those updates in my yard, let's go talk quickly about the big project lawn. I was out there about a week ago filming a few things, so here's some info on that. So right now we are taking that compost right over there, putting it out onto the yard here out front, kind of fill in some of the low spots that we still have. Also just improve the soil. We saw a big improvement. If you follow along at all with this project before, we saw a big improvement from the actual compost that we put out on the back section. So that's what we're up to so far, and then we'll probably be overseeding some of this too once we get this compost worked in a little more. So out here it looks probably about as I expected. So we had a lot of washout after we seeded, if you'll remember that part from earlier in the year. So there is some grass left here, but a lot of weeds took over this summer with seeding in the spring. The bad part about that is we don't have a pre-emergent down, so there's a lot of crabgrass in here, a lot of foxtail. The plan going forward is probably going to be take care of all these weeds this fall. Don't do anything with seeding really at this point, and we'll see what we are left with in the spring. Next spring, I'd prefer to get a crabgrass pre-emergent down. That way we can continue to build on what we have here, and we will take care of those weeds before they come up next year. Then next fall would be the time that we would look at aggressively seeding this again, depending on what it looks like, depending on what the existing grass has done. Maybe using a slice seeder at that point. Could it have went better this spring? Obviously, we would not have preferred that it would have washed away right away after we seeded, and a lot of the weeds took over. We should have sprayed slightly earlier, but that's just how life goes. Things get busy, things get out of control sometimes, and there's always a solution to it. It just takes time. This section down here was where we had the blankets, mainly where everything washed into, and you can see how much more good grass is down in this section. There's a lot of it. There's much less weed pressure going on, so that was a good thing. This part will give us an idea of what it will actually look like once we get things starting to get thicker. So just remember that part of it, that the pre-emergent is going to be an essential key to preventing all of this stuff that's here right now from coming back next year and wreaking havoc on us again, because there's enough of it out here that I know it has put down a ton of seed down into the ground waiting next year for it to come back. So we're not going to let that happen if at all possible. So it's time for me now to go enjoy the mow, and you've seen that about 1 billion times on my channel, so I'm not going to show that today, but thank you guys so much for watching this video. We'll see you next time.